Welcome, Susan. Yeah.
Lisa, hi.
According to Big Tent jargon, this is supposed to be a fireside chat.
A fireside
so imagine
chat,
there's
okay.
a chimney here and feel comfortable, not only you.
It's always dangerous as a small person to have a high chair, so I'll do my best to stay balanced.
Why is the world a better place with internet?
Interesting. Would you like me to start that as an individual or as an employee of an internet company? I think from my perspective, and it's part of my personal story, the reason I work for an internet company is because very early on, I saw that it made sense to me as an individual. Just the opportunities, this incredible communications and information platform gave me as an individual, whether it was to reach millions of books, or to read the way another country sees the same topic of conversation as just my own, to email people, to book travel tickets. So initially, it was very much a personal just excitement about what the internet offered, and I think we should never actually lose sight of that when we're talking about the internet at macro level. Think about what it's given us as individuals, what it continues to give us as individuals. So that was my starting point, and it was on that basis that I actually decided I wanted to work for internet companies. I wanted to be excited not just personally, but actually help others see the opportunity that the internet offers. And I think that's, as I said, very much at a personal level, but then if you extrapolate out from that, you've got the opportunities at economic level in terms of job creation, innovation, entrepreneurship, small businesses reaching the wider world. And then you've got cultural dissemination. I think we're still at very, very early days of the internet, of having access to lots of different cultural content, language content from different countries, from different backgrounds, from different individuals. Then you've got the good governance. I think there's a great deal of value in the internet in just its massive information and transparency on that information. And then I would also perhaps add, and I know this is a long list, you can see...
Yeah, you mentioned lots of
I
services.
Add human rights as well, but we can come back to that.
You mentioned lots of services and facilities of internet. Are we at the end of what can be done with the internet?
What can be done with it? No, I think we're still at day 0.1 possibly. I think we're still at a very, very early stage. We're only just beginning. At the beginning, the internet was one-way communication, then it was two-way communication, and then we're seeing lots of sharing of information. We've just seen a fabulous example of Hangouts. You can invite 3, 4, 10 people to that Hangouts for a discussion. I think in terms of electronic commerce, we're still at a very early stage. I think one thing that interests me so much about Turkey, in fact, is that you've got this very high internet usage figures, but actually still very low e-commerce. And I think there's incredible opportunity there for companies, businesses, individuals here to actually show their fabulous ideas and their fabulous goods and their artisanate projects and products around the world, and for others to enjoy that. So no, I think we're still very, very much at the early stages. I agree with Jeff Jarvis that we're also looking at how news will develop, how journalism will develop, how citizen reporting will develop, how the use of the internet, as I say, to put transparency, my voice has changed, to put transparency on human rights, corruption. There's so much potential. I think we're at the beginning.
What are the challenges of internet and Google? For many, these both are actually one thing or same thing, I have to say.
It's very flattering. We're a small part of the overall ecosystem, and I think long may that last, that there are always opportunities for more players to come into that ecosystem to build new ideas. I think there is people may not remember the time of other search engines such as Alta Vista. At the time, everyone said, they would be the only players. More players come into that market. I myself have worked for 2 internet companies, both of which were created by individuals, one in a garage and 2 in a university dormitory. That's where ideas can come from, and long may that continue to be the case. That's partly why we do espouse an open internet, decentralized internet, one that lots of different individuals can come to and be a part of that.
What or who is the greatest motivator of internet? The commercial actors, technology, or users?
I think it's individuals. All the great internet ideas have come from individuals. And that sounds very easy to say, but I really do mean that. I have a lot of meetings and interactions with governments, government officials, and they're all keen, how do you create a Silicon Valley? The answer is actually individuals with great ideas. It's not just buildings, it's not infrastructure. It's actually bringing together great individuals who want to solve problems. I think we've also seen on the internet lots of people who are very motivated by wanting to do positive things for society, thinking big. So it will be individuals that continue to produce good ideas, solve problems, and in that may also come business ideas, business opportunities, growth opportunities, NGO, non-governmental organization projects, societal projects. But at the end of the day, it's individuals with ambition, ideas, a little bit of risk, a willingness to take a risk and try something new. But that's what will keep the internet going. And I think the thing that motivates, again, why I am so passionate about the opportunities of the internet and why I continue to do what I do because of that, is that ideas can come up from around the edge. It is inherently, the internet is inherently decentralized. It's inherently cross-border. It's inherently not central permission-based. What that means is anyone with a great idea can access it, can, give themselves a presence and then reach others.
So you believe internet is the most democratic thing on earth?
I think it's certainly democratizing. When I said I'm, definitely a glass half full person than a glass half empty person, I'm also not naive. It's a communication channel. It's not suddenly going to be the panacea of all the world's problems, much as I would love to be that to be the case. But in my view, if I think about it, and I do think about this a lot, yes, it raises new questions, it raises new challenges. But are we in a better or a worse position to solve those challenges at a global level with the internet or without the internet? In my view, very strongly, we are in a much better position to understand each other better, to have better governance, to have better exchange of ideas that lead to better decision making, more prosperity, more of an inclusive global society than we would be if we didn't have the internet. So it's not a panacea for all the world's issues, but is it an opportunity to make a positive impact on some of those challenges? I strongly believe so. A lot of my time and my role is spent traveling around numerous countries, and including countries who have perhaps for too long been cut off from the global communication channels. And if you go to sub-Saharan Africa, if you go to Southeast Asia, and you see the way that new communities of people, new peoples are being allowed to enter into that global dialogue. And mobile internet has a lot to do with that. I think we're seeing really, really exciting developments in those countries where there's some leapfrogging straight to mobile, feature phones or innovative use of feature phones, smartphones increasingly adopted. And just the fact that even the conversation that we in more prosperous parts of the world can have with others in the rest of the world, that's incredible. In one generation ago, our parents were not in a position, my parents were not in a position to do that. I am fortunate enough to live in a world where we have the internet and we need to make the best opportunity of it for good. It doesn't come automatically. It's a communication channel. It doesn't mean it will only be used for good, but we need to ensure that it's used to maximum for good and that we address the issues that arise along the way.
Let's come to Google. Google is the biggest actor in the internet world with 35,000 employees, 70 offices in 40 countries. And how is it being this big and pretending like a startup company?
It's one of the things we think about a lot, in fact. We want to maintain, we're obviously very pleased and grateful for the trust that so many users have put in us in using our services, but we want to stay, both as employees and as a company, we still want to stay fast-moving, innovative, thinking about the next good idea, thinking about how we can improve things. And I emphasize that it's not just as a company, but also as individuals. I think people who come to Google to work at Google, people that Google employs, tend to be people who want to be very energetic and want to make a difference, and want to make a difference for good. And I think as long as we maintain that culture in our hiring, in giving those individuals the space to be innovative and to think outside the box, a horrible expression, but to allow people the space in their day jobs to also think about new ideas. And maybe it's challenges they face.
I was about to ask you how Google is keeping the spirit of innovation alive. The answer is you hiring them.
I think it always starts with hiring motivated people, but then it's about keeping them motivated, giving them the space to be creative. It's not a myth that you will find engineers at Google coming up with the next great project while they're playing volleyball, or while they're in a swimming pool, or so. It's a culture whereby we don't think that the best ideas only come from someone sitting in a suit at a desk. It's about giving them the space to be creative and learning from those good ideas. I think it's also about keeping as flat a structure as possible, not presuming that good ideas only come from the top. Good ideas can come from anywhere in an organization, and it's making sure that you have the structures in place that don't inhibit those ideas rising to the top.
You travel a lot.
Yes.
Because I just read you traveled to Asia, Pacific, Russia, Turkey, Middle East, Africa. This is your operation room.
I counted this morning. Apparently, it's 141 countries.
Yeah, is it? Yeah. So you meet all the politicians from every country. What's their common side?
So I think the common thing is that the common thing is that the internet is still, as we've said, it's still a relatively new phenomenon. The amazing thing is how quickly we have actually, I think, taken it for granted. I also think there are risks in taking it for granted, and maybe we can come back to that. But I think in the scheme, we've got decades, if not centuries, of legislation, of ways of doing things, of political systems. And suddenly the internet comes along, which, as I said, is not inherently national. It's inherently global. It's inherently without borders. And there are always going to be challenges in that, in how do you bring a global platform, how does a largely national-based, I'm being attacked by a fly here, how does a largely national-based system of politics, which is still true in just about every region of the world, how does that national system of politics deal with a naturally international platform that is the internet? And I think what you see are different stages along that journey of addressing that balance. Obviously, there are some countries who are still looking from a very fundamental level of how do you give people access. Obviously, you can't get the benefits of the internet unless people have access to the internet. So a lot of countries are still in the position of how do we provide access and how do we expand access? How do we make it affordable? How do we ensure there's enough competition in the market that will reduce prices to a level that is meaningful for individuals to really make the most of having access to the internet? In other countries where access is, we're lucky enough to have access, and I appreciated the minister's comments this morning about even access is something we all need to collectively keep investing in. But then you're looking at the sort of fundamental regulatory environment. What is it that gives internet companies, entrepreneurs, the confidence to establish internet-based businesses, internet-based organizations, internet-based movements, campaigns. And then you're into questions about legal certainty, some of the interesting topics of the balance in copyright legislation, in protection for hosting platforms, for intermediary liabilities. So you'll get a much more mature discussion about how do you get the balances right between, for example, protecting copyright and allowing authors to reach the public, to reach buyers. You know, how do you get the balance of protection and distribution? How do you get the balance of protecting platforms from being overly exposed to liability whilst also ensuring responsibility? So many countries are still in that, you know, that looking at what is the regulatory environment that helps you secure all the positive opportunities of the internet. And then I think more recently, and it really is very recent, it was only earlier this year that we began to identify that there isn't a lot of data, there isn't a lot of research on, well, what is the economic contribution that the internet makes to society? And it was only earlier this year that we began to see some of those surveys and some of that research work come out, and some of it we funded in order to ask that question. And I think we're now in another stage of thinking, and many governments, particularly those in countries facing, you know, some sort of financial disruption or crisis right now, is, well, how do we use the fact that the internet economy is this incredible contributing agent to GDP growth, to job creation, and how do we get the maximum from that? I know Jeff Jarvis, I agree with just about everything Jeff Jarvis usually says, but I think his comments about job creation need further expansion. So those same studies that came out earlier this year also suggested that for every one job disrupted, the internet economy produces 2.6 jobs. So I think there's some changes going on, but actually the opportunity is there. And if I just extend that to Turkey, so some of those countries, if I talk, for example, of my own country, the UK, you know, up to sort of around 7% of its GDP is now coming from the internet economy. Here in Turkey, we're at about just under 1%, but with incredible opportunity, which is being exploited now going forward. So I think, you know, that's a discussion that's very recent. I think while people were looking at the regulatory framework, they were perhaps missing the bigger picture of the positive contribution. So now what I see is a lot of governments looking at, well, how do we secure greater employment? How do we help local entrepreneurs? How do we help Turkish people become, you know, create the next Googles and Amazons and Facebooks? What do they need in order to have an environment that will enable them to do that? And that's a discussion that's going on in many, many countries. And then obviously there are some more problematic, you know, countries where we are seeing increased censorship as well. We shouldn't be, you know, naive. There are different discussions in different countries.
Susan, thank you very much.
Oh, that's
It's very nice to see how enthusiastic you are about internet. Thank you for sharing your views about internet with us.